before I roll anything, I just want to, first of all, thanks Sean for that great setup for Cooper Union, and Jim for your intro, and for Ruckus for having us here today, and thank you for coming. And one of the things I want to talk about before I get into all this kind of lifting the veil behind the curtain, how the internet works and what it means for all of us, and how we can reclaim what is referred to as the digital commons. Is we want to understand what is the digital commons, and also what is the economy that's connected to the digital commons. And you know, the internet itself and all the underlying technology actually comes out of military research and development, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Administration. And the first purpose of the internet wasn't to you know, send text messages and watch videos. It was to survive a nuclear strike and maintain command and control. So it's really a product of the Cold War. And as I was coming up as a media artist, we were very aware that, you know, especially the way America projected its technological preeminence was actually through our innovation in television special effects. And this is kind of where I cut my teeth in the 80s to become a specialist in that realm, and also where I learned a lot of my ability to understand and learn technology, not just how to use it, but how to build it. And that's a very important thing. So the digital commons is something that's just like our physical commons, which is disappearing. You know, we have a disappearance of public space. We saw a temporary autonomous zone, in a sense, with Zuccotti Park and Occupy Wall Street. But on the internet, people are very misled because they're being, I would say, deceived, outright deceived by what I call the thought misleaders, and seduced by the honeypot of consumerism into the unholy trinity, being seduced into consumerism and the digital panopticon through the unholy trinity of Google, Facebook, and Twitter. And this is a pathos of the age that I'm seeing, where people are suffering Stockholm syndrome, and they're addicted to this digital crack, and they violently defend their consumer choices when confronted with the perils that they are subject to by being seduced into this false sense of the world without privacy. And it became my concern years ago, as I understand the nature of technology, and people spoke about things like Project Echelon and the global surveillance system, and you know, as we transition from Cold War to post-Cold War, from the nuclear power to the non-state actors, this all had an effect on how our communications have been transformed from this notion of freedom and liberty to consumption. And 1995 was a turning point in the history of the internet, because of course it was begun as a publicly funded project. The early adopters of internet and the early pioneers believed that this was, in a sense, establishing a kind of a digital commons. But there was a transitional point in 1995, and many of you may not have even been on the internet yet at that time, because, you know, before 1995, the internet was restricted in its use and purpose to, besides command and control of a, you know, nuclear counterstrike, for academic and science use only. And it was considered bad etiquette to sell anything, except through, say, the Usenet, which is the kind of like email feeds, classified ads. But it was very bad manners to send an email, or even before there were web pages, put up anything that was saying something was for sale or to use a commercial purpose of the internet. But in 1995, the so-called acceptable use policy changed. And that was the dawn of the commercial internet as we know it today. And in fact, actually, people might know the EFF, or the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And most people think that they're out there to fight for cyber liberties and cyber rights. But in fact, John Perry Barlow and Mitch Kapor, the founders of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the frontier was commerce. And their work was to change the acceptable use policy of the internet from the academic and scientific network to the commercial network. That's really how the EFF was born, and that paved the way for the rise of the commercial internet. So in 1995, you know, being very aware of transformation in media, my work with Namjoon Paik, we always looked ahead. We considered ourselves media and technology futurians, as opposed to historians who look back, we look ahead. And so when I saw the internet, I knew that one day this was going to be television, that the way technology was increasing and accelerating, this would eventually be what Namjoon dreamed of in those days was the global two-way TV. We didn't know how it was going to happen or how it would work, but it turned out to be packet switched. And as the bandwidth increased, then so the ability to transmit real-time data. So in 1995, the internet turned from academic scientific to commercial use. And one of the most essential things that makes the internet work is called the domain name. So you know, whatever like cooper.edu or, you know, etc. You're using it all the time. Whenever you click a link for an email, whenever you send any kind of a message or connect to any service on the internet, it requires a domain name. And the way it works is, for example, if you look at this, let's see, I can put in this command. Anybody can do this on their computer. Open up a terminal and type host, and this is a domain name query. So domain name consists of a top-level domain and a second-level domain. And when you put in that query, it will return Cooper.edu has an address of 199.98.16.175. That's called the IP address. Mm-hmm. Then there's some other information, which machine will transmit its email. Okay? Without this, the internet doesn't work. It'll stop. So anyway, in 1995, the cost of a domain name, which was once free to register through the government-granted monopoly, was turned into a $100 adventure. And so most people protested. They said, oh, we should get this for free. This is the public thing, and why should we pay $100? My response was, how does it work? So, you know, being the inherent reverse engineer as I am, I love to take everything apart and understand it. So, on the internet, one of the great things, and also part of the digital commons, is what we call open source. Open source code means that software is not a secret, that is all the methods and lines of code are published and anybody can have access to alter it or adopt it into their work. So the whole internet is based on open source technology because it was publicly funded. Everybody owns it. So I looked at how does the domain name system work, and I read the specifications about 20 times because I didn't know what the heck any of that stuff meant. Probably like the way it sounds when I speak to you. And I got it, and so I started to experiment, and throughout my travels in Europe as a media artist, I made friends with all the Unix lab administrators in many different countries, including Finland and Sweden and Germany and Netherlands and Slovenia, and I got these folks to collaborate with me, and I created a project named .space in 1996. The first year between 95 and 96, I was kind of figuring it out in secret. And then with a programmer friend of mine, we created actually the very first real-time domain registration system and a lot of other tools that are now commonly expected through your domain provider now, like URL forwarding, domain zone editing, so you could map your domain to your IP address. So the first time it was democratizing how a citizen could create a domain name and route their own traffic to where they wanted to go. That's very important, and most people still don't understand how that happens, but it's in use every day. So we set up this system, we made a web-based registry, real-time, launched it in late 1996, and started with an original list of, say, about 30, what we call proof of concept, top-level domains. Now, the domain name system, I'm going to come back in here and give you a little tutorial real quick. Domain name system works kind of like this. And I'm going to have to just do this manually. This is how it's laid out. And it's actually a kind of a branching tree structure, right? And then this little dot here is called the root. And actually, you know, it's a misnomer when people say .com or .edu because it's not really .edu. .com, it's com dot, and the dot points back to the root, you see? That's what I call the invisible dot. But that dot is the central facility that will tell the rest of the internet where is .com or .net or .org or .edu. And so when you do a domain query, right, and then the domain namespace, and why also I named my project name .space, was because it's a namespace, and anytime anybody refers to it, they can't help but mention our name. So I thought that was a perfect meme and also the perfect graphic name .space, .space being our top-level domain. So the DNS domain name system namespace is analogous to the Unix file system. You know, when you type in a URL and it says whatever slash whatever slash whatever, well, that's the directory structure in Unix. So it's exactly this. And the difference being, you know, when you do a URL, it will be /images /crostazzo.jpg or something like that. It goes left to right. And the domain system goes dot right to left. So that's the difference. But the conceptual logical structure is identical. And so when you do a domain name query, what happens is, this is the client, and you type in cooper.edu, and it's going to go to your ISP's resolver, right? And then it's going to pass off edu to the root name server, which is going to give it an answer back, and then send it to the cooper.edu's domain server, and then this pairs the IP address and then gives the answer back. So every time you send an email or click a link, it's doing this rounding game, this little zigzag game until it finds the answer and then gives the answer. And then here's a little bit more complex diagram of it in context. So it's happening in milliseconds. You don't really notice it. Sometimes when you click a link on a web page, it might take a while. That's because it's trying to resolve the domain. And okay, so I'll get to that in a minute. That's next chapter. With my friends all over the world running replicas of our domain database, we had started with about 30 proof of concept, for example, like .art, .music, .video, .film, .media, .nyc, etc. And then we put up, at that time we called it a survey, today we call it crowdsourcing. We put up a survey, what do you suggest? And we got replies from all over the world, and this started in 1996, we put out the request for top-level domains. And we got a lot of responses, and we began to create these in our database and replicate them. And one of the other innovations that I did, and me and my team did at Name.Space, was what we call a shared registry system. And in fact, one of our goals was to not have just a master root, but also a shared root that was decentralized. And I'll get back to this point again now, because while we created this, not everybody in the world could type in net.art and it would resolve a page. And I'll illustrate this to you like this. So the way I showed you that, cooper.edu, there's a command called dig, right? So if I say dig edu.any, this will tell me what name servers will respond to the whole top-level domain of edu. You know, if I say dig cooper.edu, oops, it will then give me the name servers that will respond to Cooper Union. Okay, everybody got that concept? All right, so they're all asking this one central file. All the providers in the world basically ask this one central root file. So to demystify another point is people think the internet is totally decentralized. It's a false assumption because there's a central choke point, which is the root domain. And so if I say dig la 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 any, it's going to tell me it doesn't exist, you know, non-existent domain, right? If you go to your normal internet provider and you say dig nyc.any, it's going to tell you it doesn't exist, but in our case it does. And so in order for, another example, if you want to see the resolution, host name.space, right? And then it gives an IP answer. So obviously my computer is able to resolve these domains. If you go home to your home computer, or you go out over your internet on your phone, it won't be able to resolve name.space. And the reason is because these domains have been excluded from the master root. So what we did back in the day was we had to download an application. Unfortunately, I don't have an illustration of that with me right now. And where people could download it and click on it, or there was instructions how to go into your computer in order to configure it for the name.space domains. And actually, I'm going to take this opportunity because we have contemporary versions of this, if I can find my cursor. There we go. Okay. And so this is how to set up your iPhone. Well, actually, this is how to set up your Mac. So let me just get this up here. Right? This illustrates the point that, type in name.space or river.art, it says not found. So you go into your system preferences and you make a change, and you take out your existing domain servers, you go to your DNS, and take that out and put in addresses of our machines that are resolving these. It's very easy. Anybody can do this, but it's very hard to convince everybody on the internet to do this. And so once you do that, then try these same URLs again. So for example, river.art, that resolves, you see? And so art.code is next. This seems to run. Oh boy, okay. Why did that stop? Can we skip ahead? Sorry for repeating. Okay, so again, not found. That's how you make the change. It's good you see it twice because then you'll get the clue. You can download this video from our website, which the legacy address is namespace.us. So again, enter our resolvers, and then you will be opted into name.space. And this is a revolutionary act at this point, because what it does is it breaks the control of the central gatekeepers on the one hand.
Your video stopped.
Yeah, that's strange.
The video. No, it's the end.
Oh, is it really? Okay, I must have picked the wrong clip. Okay. Well, there's that one, and then there's another cute one here, how to do it on the iPhone.
This video shows you how to set your iPhone to be able to resolve name.space generic top-level domains. First thing we do is go to our settings. In the settings, then we go to our Wi-Fi network. So we can connect to the network that we're going to use. And look at the settings. Go down to where it says DNS, domain name services, and delete out the one that the server handed to you. Take that number out, and then you want to enter one of our servers. And for this demonstration, we're going to...
All right, well, you get it. I don't know why that's not playing. It must be the resolution or something, I'm not sure. Okay, anyway, so you can opt in, resolve these domains, and break the kind of central point of control. Now, how this relates to the digital commons is first of all, there's an economy to this, and it's a way that we can establish a changing course of revenues that could go back toward establishing, reinvesting in community infrastructure. So I'll give you an example. Well, actually, I need to back up for a second. So what happened was not everybody in the world would do that. And so we had a decision to make, and that decision was, do we want our domains to be global? And the answer to that was yes. So in 1996, as I was exploring this, there was always the question, who owns the internet and who's in control? And so at that time, I had a server up called Media Filter, where I was putting up a lot of my research and things like that before blogging and stuff. And so I was hosting this magazine, Covert Action Quarterly, which was investigative journalism. And so I spoke to the editor one day in DC and told her what I was working on, and she said, this is a great story, how the privatization of the internet from government to public, private sector is taking place. So John Dillon wrote this article, Networking with Spooks. Now spooks means spies, like the intelligence community. And what John Dillon, and this cartoon is a perfect illustration, and in fact it's this on nuclear fuel today, more than steroids. Because this is the company that I sued, the monopoly, that Sean mentioned in 1997. We had an antitrust suit against Network Solutions to add our data into the root file so they would resolve globally. And of course, they're connected to the National Security Agency, And so anyway, in 1997, I filed this antitrust lawsuit to get our domains added to the root, which was based on MCI versus AT&T. And John Dillon's article revealed that these are the people I pissed off. So I don't know if you recognize him, but that's Robert Gates. He was former head of the CIA and then Secretary of Defense. This is William Perry under Clinton administration, Department of Defense. This is Melvin Laird with Richard Nixon. He was the Secretary of Defense. Bobby Ray Inman, former head of the National Security Agency and the one who coined the phrase "born classified" when talking about encryption. There's Gates again, and then this is William Perry again. So these are the people I pissed off and threw a monkey wrench in their IPO when I sued them in 1997. What happened was they got immunity, and something called ICANN was formed. And ICANN is this insiders collective of industry leaders and business leaders who are dominating the domain market. So how we can reclaim the digital commons is by taking the revolutionary act of opting in to name.space DNS and then signing up for a domain name under name.space, putting up a page, and then telling other people about it. And then what our goal is, and why this is as important and I think as effective as something like Move Your Money Day, so move it out of Chase Bank and put it into the community bank or the credit union, is that the economy of the domain name system is vast. It's worth tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And when name.space launches 500 or so top-level domains and we have a control in a public interest model, that's a multi-billion-dollar annual economy that is not going to our friends. So, and our goal is, if you're aware, in the current market, and also as a result of my lawsuit, there's a wholesale retail now. In 1995, when you had to pay $100, it was one place to register your domain name. After our lawsuit, there was a change in the market that allowed wholesale retail. So the top-level domain business is a wholesale business, and when you go to web.com or GoDaddy or register.com or these other Yahoo to register your domain, they're actually the retailers. And so whenever you sign up a domain, where does the money go, right? It's supposed to be a public commons, public good on the internet. This is one of the few things people will pay for is a domain name. The money goes, for example, if you register with GoDaddy, he's an ex-military guy who goes and shoots and kills elephants, right? You work with name.space, we want to not put our business, although GoDaddy will be free to sell our domains like anybody else, we rather set up the registrars with the libraries, public libraries. This way, when you register your domain name, or if you transfer it from GoDaddy to the library, the money goes to the library, and then that helps to fund to keep the libraries open. So the question is, would you rather pay an ex-military guy who kills elephants, or would you rather keep the library open so people can learn? People compare.
Oh, there's a little more.
Libraries!
Come on.
People compare the domain name system to real estate again, and if you want to say that it's fertile land, we can either frack it or organic farm it. And so we're the organic farmers, and the other guys are the frackers. And so, yeah. So, any questions?
About $1 billion.
Okay. Hey, thanks a lot. And
Well, yeah. See, the thing is about the digital commons, it's, what Paul is describing is something that happened at Zuccotti Park, something that is involved with the Federal Reserve Bank. This whole idea of half private, half public, the idea of what capitalism is, when you look at technology, from the end of World War II to today, we just put a goddamn truck on Mars. I mean, the damn thing probably couldn't even fit in this room itself. I don't know, probably could barely fit in this room. It's about 8 feet high, 9 feet high, huge. It's a truck. And it just checked them. Because the instrumentation was so delicate, they had to like gently, barely with any impact, drop it on the moon. Now, our tax dollars paid for that. Going to to Mars, going to the moon, transistors. You ever hear of transistor radio? That was a big deal in the 50s. That was military technology. That was our money, tax money. And what they do is they just give it out to people that are connected. In the case of the internet, it's all military people. But in other situations, other people that are involved in working with our money get an inside track to creating these companies and profiting. This goes back to Alexander Hamilton. There were 5 armed rebellions against the American government right after the Revolution. This idea of what is supposedly free market, free trade, it's a total myth. If they don't have our resources, our collective resources, the commons of our tax money, to create these technologies, these ways of moving forward, they can't afford to do it themselves. IBM and AT&T could not have developed a computer without our tax money, without us putting in a huge amount. All this money for the research and development really came from us. And they just walk away with profits. Now they're not even paying taxes on it. So the idea of what these things mean. Think of every computer.
Well, the context of how this operates as a business, because it is a business. And in fact, there's what I personally am engaged in and passionate about is what's called social enterprise. Because a corporation in and of itself, being a corporate entity, isn't evil. It's how a corporation behaves. There's this notion of corporate social responsibility, things like that. So when something acts as a social enterprise, you don't just measure profit by how much you return money to your shareholders. You look at what's the positive impact on society. How does it fit into the context of the community? What are the multiplying effects that happen when this type of economy drives other initiatives, right? Innovation doesn't start from large monopolies and conglomerates. It really comes from the agile entrepreneurs, people who are free to take risks and invent things. And in this instance, again, while people were protesting, oh, well, we don't want to pay $100 for the domain, we want it for free, my entrepreneurial response was, how can I build something else that uses this technology? And therefore the .art, .news, .nyc, etc. was a natural outgrowth of that. And then the question is, what is the notion of equality of opportunity? This is something that economist Stiglitz wrote about in his essay, Of the 1%, by the 1%, for the 1%, where the large companies will actually stifle innovation or they'll steal it. And for example, in this case, with Name.Space, we're confronted with this opportunity inequality because of the large money invested by large companies to dominate the domain space now. And the question is, it's a hypocrisy that's going on, because although the rhetoric is that the innovators and the small businesses should be supported, in fact, that's really not the case in this country. It's the large money interests that are able to use their brute economic force to dominate the idea space and become thought misleaders. And in this case, the business of a social enterprise in the domain space is essential to create an economy of the digital commons and also to carve out a new space that's changing the direction of where the internet is headed today. In the Repo Commons project, the one sign said digital panopticon ahead. Does everybody know what panopticon means?
Nope. Okay,
panopticon is a prison design by a British architect, Jeremy Bentham, in which there's a central observation tower and the prison cell blocks are radial spokes out from that. And at all times, the prisoners can be observed by the watchmen, but never know exactly when they're being observed. And so this has an impact on people's behavior, and it has a chilling effect. And so when there's this aggregation of everybody's personal data into the cloud, this becomes the panopticon. And so we need to shift the economy away from that and create a digital commons, and our way is to use the top-level domain space and the economy related to that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.